how can I make a difference? Right? Everybody wants to find their own way. And I would say this, always ask why. Why is it made like this? Why is it designed like this? Why does it have to be this way? And if you ask that question enough, the majority of the time the answer is, I don't know. That's just the way it's always been done. If that's your answer, probably a better way to do it, a more efficient way to do it.
Welcome to Coffee Break, the official podcast of the Brake Report. Here we dive deep into the world of brake technology, bringing you exclusive interviews with industry leaders and insights into the companies shaping our future. Let's get started. Welcome, I'm Brian Hagman, and my guest today is Ryan Biehl, Senior Vice President, Foundation Brakes Product Line at ZF. Thanks for joining me, Ryan.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so before we get started and talk about ZF and talk about braking, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background. So can you share maybe an overview of maybe your journey so far with ZF?
I started with ZF I think it's been about 12 years now. Backgrounds primarily with ZF is in the quality area. So I came to ZF as the head of North American braking quality, and then took over global responsibility for global quality for braking. Then ZF merged the braking and steering divisions together. So I took the head of that division for braking and steering, and then naturally progressed into the role I have today as the head of Foundation Brakes for ZF.
When you started your career, did you always know you wanted to get into automotive transportation, or did the industry just kind of find you?
I think the industry found me. I guess is the easiest way to say that. When I was in quality, I say nobody goes into quality. It kind of finds you. It's kind of hard to get out of that. I guess I moved. So I'm from a rural area, from a farm in southeastern Ohio. And out of college, I wanted to move far enough away where I didn't have to go back home on the weekends to put in hay or do any of the farm stuff. So moving up here, just kind of got into automotive by accident more than anything else, and been in it ever since now.
Sure. I guess, yeah, being in Detroit area, it would be hard to stay away from automotive, I guess.
Yep.
So talk about your current role. What are some of your day-to-day responsibilities, or what does your current role entail?
So I think it's different from day to day, but I guess what I'll say is the primary objectives that I have that have to keep in focus is ensuring our long-term strategies are being met on time for when we want them to, monitoring our products in the launch process to ensure that any escalations that need to occur happen, engaging with my engineering teams on our product roadmap, making sure things get through CV, DV, and PV when they're supposed to, and then working with my portfolio team on customer RFQs. Obviously, part of our strategy is I have a sales acquisition target that I've got to meet. So I've got to make sure that we're achieving that through the year. And then obviously I have a P&L responsibility. So I've got to make sure that our OP, the yearly plan, is on target and meeting the objectives that we've set for ourselves.
So in your role, do you have responsibilities for any of the commercial vehicle side of the business, or is it primarily light vehicle braking?
It's passenger vehicle braking. When I'll say it like this, any vehicle that does not require a special license. Some of these transportation vans and things along those lines, the Foundation Brakes for that as well.
You're probably the perfect guest to ask this question for with your quality background, but clearly quality and performance are the main factors when developing brake systems. So how does ZF ensure that this stays a focus when developing brakes?
I think it starts with engineering, obviously. Having the right processes is absolutely critical and key. If you don't have the right processes, you can't follow them. You got to have good designs, good validation plans for that. And I think, at ZF, we really try to partner with all of our suppliers, bringing them in early on in the design phase. I mean, they're the experts in the components they're making, and we shouldn't be trying to dictate to them how to manufacture this or not. So keeping manufacturing feasibility in mind, bringing the suppliers, partnering with them through the entire phase so they truly understand what their parts are for, how they're used, and then listening to them. Obviously, getting their feedback is extremely important. And then having a very, very solid, sound launch process that we do at ZF to ensure flawless execution.
In the world of technology, automotive industry is constantly innovating, evolving. How does ZF stay innovative, especially when it comes to braking?
Let me back up and answer it, maybe explain a little bit. first, and then it'll kind of flow through. But, the evolution of mobility toward the software-defined vehicle and all it can bring, including the new functionalities that a brake-by-wire system can enable, means that the horizon we look at for longitudinal controls is at a new horizon. And I mentioned brake-by-wire because when you talk about innovative, you have to constantly evolve. And with new technology being the forefront of what you're trying to do, trying to be first and best the market. But with foundation brakes, the understanding of the physics of the vehicle in terms of why a wheel locks and slips on different road surfaces, how dynamic loads from driving, the different driving maneuvers can change the load dynamics. Once you understand that, the foundation brakes is the perfect area to confirm all of that through, the validation testing, and then obviously in real life vehicle testing on different road surfaces. But from an innovative standpoint, I'd say I set goals, and obviously zero drag is a goal. The Euro 7 emissions is another goal, continuously reducing brake noise. But the main goal is zero accidents. That's the main goal that we have to have. If we set those goals and we make advancements, that's where innovation comes from.
You just mentioned Euro 7. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being top priority, like how much of a concern or how much are you focusing on Euro 7 and watching that from 1 to 10 on a scale?
I'd say it's 10. It's not concern. It's a priority. And I think it will become global. It's not just one region, one customer. They all seem to get on board. And it's the right thing to do. Let's start there. From a sustainability standpoint, it's the right thing to do. So it is in my top 3 focus from an engineering standpoint that, hey, we must achieve it. How are we going to test for it? How are we going to verify it? How are we going to validate it? And repeatability.
Are you having to put a bunch or a lot more resources into this with the Euro 7, or is it mainly just kind of something you were already going to focus on anyway, with sustainability and some of your own internal goals at ZF?
There's been resources that have been moved to it. I mean, it's not a ton. I mean, we've got a core engineering project around it. Primarily, it's the OEMs. I mean, they're system level responsible, right? So it's not just the pads themselves that are involved in the emissions. You've got the rotor and the friction material interact. So I think the customers are really driving to understand how they're going to do it. And then obviously the friction suppliers, if they don't meet it, they're not going to be sourced. So for us, it's a matter of how can we test it at a caliper level.
And speaking of, I guess, products too, is there any new technology, new products, any new developments that you're able to talk about today?
First, if you look at the global mega trends of electrification and the software-defined vehicle, requiring a brake system to work across different powertrain configurations, independent of the driver input to stop the vehicle. They got to be compatible with a central or a domain ECU. The architecture for the command may not come from a dedicated braking ECU. Right now, we're in the process of developing multiple new brake-by-wire systems. Electromechanical brakes, EMB, as we call it, is a fully dry system. There is no longer a need for hydraulic circuitry or brake fluid. So we'll call that 4-wheel EMB if the entire vehicle is a dry system. It's only going to utilize an electronic motor and smart actuator controls with a redundant circuit in the event of a primary circuit issue. We also are the leading provider of a one-box integrated brake controls. That is already a by-wire system that eliminates the vacuum need within the vehicle. It puts all of the brake controls into one unit itself, and we're currently developing a by-wire fault-tolerant version of IBC. So a true wet brake-by-wire system. By offering either the wet IBC system or our EMB dry system, or a combination of both, a hybrid system, where maybe the rear is dry and the front is wet, I think we're able to cover the full gamut of what the OEMs are going to be looking for, because every one of them has a different strategy for implementing brake-by-wire. But what I will say is we've got several customers with a planned SOP in 2026. So it's not that far away from when we're going to start seeing these true by-wire, whether it's a dry, a hybrid, or a combination of a wet and dry.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear you talk about products now when it's software, electromechanical, versus straight up just talking about pads, calipers, rotors, things like that. With electric vehicles increasingly hitting the market, a lot of money being spent also on autonomous vehicles. How does that affect ZF as far as the business strategy, or does it affect you guys at all? Are you already kind of there and you're already keeping up with it?
No, I think it does. I mean, it's a really an exciting time to be in automotive right now. For ZF, it means the rethinking how we engineer what we're calling and what we have called vehicle motion controls. This has in turn led us to reorganize our chassis team. We consider our chassis business as one of our core competencies. We're already the leader in vehicle motion control technologies. The next logical step for us is to bring those two divisions together. Our active safety, which includes braking and steering, and our car chassis division, which has rear wheel steering, active suspension, and bringing those together. By doing this, we're following the demands of what the industry is asking for, and many of our customers are asking for: simple and effective streamlining of a chassis solution. That way, they've got one point of contact and that they can go to for their whole entire what we'll call VMC request and needs.
So I want to get back to talking about your career in your current role. So what has been maybe one of the biggest challenges you've had to face in this particular role, and how did you get around it?
Well, I guess it's just what I talked about is ZF, we are the number one leader of foundation brakes globally. Biggest challenge is navigating a strategy for the adoption of brake-by-wire, right? Because you look at foundation brakes, there isn't a whole lot of mechatronics or software that's involved in that. There is some with EPB and things along those lines. But, the skill sets that are needed to transition to EMB, they're very different in the fact that, you go from a 90% mechanical to, now you need 40% software, 30% electromechanical, and, you only need 30% of the mechanical. So trying to understand the adoption and how quickly brake-by-wire is coming. But I think we've got a good strategy that we can be fluid and adopt as quickly as we need to. If you asked me a year ago, hey, what is going to be the take rate in 2026 or 2028 for true brake-by-wire EMB? It was drastically different a year ago, and it was, it's constantly changing every single month. It's almost like, hey, once one customer finds out that, hey, here's this customer A's plan for brake-by-wire, and now all of a sudden there's a rush to try to figure out and not be the last. But again, I think we've got a good strategy that we can be fluid to adjust to those changes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, that was one of my next questions was going to be what year, like what year do you predict, or what year do we think realistically brake-by-wire will be like mass produced on new vehicles? You think it's within the next 10 years? You think it's going to be later than that?
I guess I'd have to back up and answer that differently. I mean, we've confirmed that we have ZF has SOPs in 2026 for brake-by-wire in two different regions of the world. So when do I think it's going to hit a take rate that, is equivalent to traditional hydraulic foundation brakes that we see today? I don't think that will be until mid 2030s. But I do think once an OEM does make the change, the value proposition for brake-by-wire is far better than traditional hydraulic brakes. So it could, again, you ask me that question a year from now, probably going to be a different answer.
Yeah, I get it. I just asked about maybe some challenges. So what's been maybe any victories, any achievements, milestones that you're proud of that you want to talk about?
If I look back, I would say it's the design and launch of our first by-wire IBC integrated brake controls. That was done with a global engineering team, with global suppliers, multiple manufacturing facilities in different regions, brand new technology, brand new design, and doing that in 3 years and SOPing at a very, very high volume. I take personal pride in being part of that, because we really did at that time put new robust processes in place for some of these, the new changes in mechatronic systems. And I think that was an absolute success. And we're using it as a blueprint right now for, how we're designing and how we're going to launch our EMB, our drive-by-wire system. So it was a great global team effort, not only from, engaging our suppliers, like I was telling you from the very beginning. How would you change this design? Is it manufacturing feasible? And then really getting them, understanding the SFMEA, DFMEAs, and really putting a solid design and manufacturing solution together. It was an absolute success.
Yeah, and from a talent perspective too, right? That's, doing something like that is a lot different than traditional brake development. And I know you guys have been working on this for years, but was there, when you started a project like this, did you have to take a massive shift in recruiting different types of talent, or did you just develop your talent within and you just kind of learned as you went?
I think the talent was already there, within the company. I mean, we did brake controls from a standard slip control system. We did software. We had ECU manufacturing and design, so from the PCBA standpoint, I would say that was all internally. Now, do we have to grow the team? Yeah. You had the core competencies for manufacturing, engineering, we're already there. So it's a matter of just bringing on additional talent, additional skill sets to grow that team in scope and size.
So what advice would you give a young professional that's looking to start a career in the brake industry? Is there anything that stands out to you?
And I do give this advice, and it's advice that I received when I was out of college. Because when I asked, well, how can I make a difference? Right? Everybody wants to find their own way. How do you make what do you do to make a difference? And I would say this: always ask why. Why is it made like this? Why is it designed like this? Why does it have to be this way? And if you ask that question enough, the majority of the time the answer is, I don't know. That's just the way it's always been done. So if that's your answer, probably a better way to do it, a more efficient way to do it. And I think secondly, advice that I would give, people that I mentor here is networking. Networking is, when I first came out of college, what do you mean networking? But automotive is a small world. And it doesn't matter, I've run into people in Malaysia that I used to work with 15 years ago. Right. So, that's a very, very important aspect of anyone's career.
Those are two great pieces of advice. And the networking, I definitely can agree on. Both are great, but networking for sure. A lot of folks, they take for granted early in their career, and it's later on in their career when they kind of finally realize that all the connections they can make and advance their career. So no, that's very good. So what about skill sets? Because the industry is way different and has evolved since you and I maybe started our careers in the industry. Different skill sets, different technology, things like that. So what skills or skill sets do you think young professionals need to focus on now to be successful within the industry?
I think I'll look at this maybe a little bit of a higher level. There's been a lot of talk about the future of mobility as it relates to software-defined vehicles and how that relates to a brake system. But I personally think you have to have one foot in both, the hardware side of it as well as the software side of it. You will always have brakes in a vehicle of some kind. Having a foot in both sides of hardware, understanding how it works, as well as understanding what direction the software is going, and understanding the software period is a big portion that's difficult for a lot of people to grasp. And it took me a really long time and a lot of people to sit down and explain it to me, again, asking the why.
No, good point. The brake industry is probably not the first choice for many young professionals starting their career. In a company like ZF, a huge company, global company, well-known name in the industry, a leader. But I'm guessing you all even maybe at times find it challenging to recruit, retain some of the best talent in the industry. So what's been your approach, or how are you guys taking on this challenge from the recruitment perspective?
I'll answer it maybe a little bit different than how we recruit. And I'll answer it this way. When I think about attracting and retaining talent, it's about making sure that potential employees and our current employees from a retention standpoint are reminded of just how important their work is. If you think about a family member, your mom or dad, your kids, your friends, everyone rides or drives in a vehicle. And, foundation brakes, that's pretty important. It's a safety product. I think everyone takes for granted that, hey, your vehicle stops. There's a lot more to it than just, friction material against the rotor to stop the vehicle. We play a crucial role in ensuring safety and mobility and braking. So getting everyone to understand that, because everyone wants a passion about something. Like I said, they want to feel that what they're doing is making a difference, is making a change. So the drive to innovate has a passion for sustainable solutions that make a real difference in society today and into the future. And with our vision of next generation mobility, for us, it's more about not getting just from point A to point B, about purposeful innovation that connects people, ideas, and possibilities. As it relates to attracting talent, the excitement about the future for each employee is part of what what empowers our workforce, continue to transform mobility, generate new ideas, fresh ideas, and possibilities. Given the opportunity to work for a global company like ZF, from a attracting talent standpoint, with our huge breadth and depth experience, our different product lines. I mean, it's not just braking that ZF does, and be part of that new team to develop the new functionalities and safety technologies that will make mobility better. Again, the end goal is zero accidents. ZF's end goal, zero accidents.
Before we wrap up here, I want to talk about ZF and where you guys are headed. So where do you see ZF's brake business heading, I don't know, next 5 or 10 years?
Still the world leader in brake systems, both from a mechanical and a software side of it. The future may look a little bit different. We may not provide a mechanical part, but we may provide the software portions of that. It's still braking, but we're not maybe providing a hardware portion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what some of the areas, maybe the biggest area of growth. So you think it's more on the software side, electrical versus hardware?
I think it's electromechanical. From an area of growth, I mean, it's probably a great business to be in, to be a motor supplier right now.
Yeah.
The number of smart actuators that are going in these vehicles, not just from the braking aspect of it, but from, you look at chassis controls overall, that's a great area to be in. So I think the largest growth is going to be in electromechanical, but as well software.
Mm-hmm.
As you look at whether it's a central ECU or domain ECUs, they still require software, and there's always going to be some level of software changes with each new product that's developed.
How do you envision the future of the brake industry? You think similar? I mean, do you have any insights or thoughts on where the industry as a whole is headed?
Yeah, I mean, well, the need for stopping a vehicle is always going to be there. So you're always going to need a brake system, even with regenerative braking. The need for friction to stop a vehicle, whether that's humans are in control or it's software controlled, you still need a brake system utilizing friction. Like every other industry and component within a vehicle, we will evolve to meet the needs of what our customers and ultimately the end users are. Brakes aren't going anywhere. Probably won't look like what we have today.
Very good. Well, Ryan, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining me, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
I would love to. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
This is Brian Hagman, host of Coffee Break. I want to give a big thank you to today's guest and to all of you for tuning in. Until next time, let's keep breaking stuff.